And our final guest joining us now with the market research update, Roman Kaiyuzhny from APEVUE, a global leader in market-based pricing data for private stocks. Roman, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So we're approaching the end of the year. How have the stocks of private companies fared compared to public equity this past year?
Well, it's been an interesting journey for private stocks. Initially, there's been a fair amount of decoupling with public stocks starting to decline earlier in the year, and private stocks actually still performing reasonably strongly. Right up until Q2, sort of mid Q2 of this year, when we started to see a much closer correlation and a significantly faster sell-off in the private markets. And that basically continued through to about midsummer, where, in fact, private stocks began to underperform, the most closely compared, the NASDAQ, often, because the technology overweight nature of the private stocks we price, NASDAQ is probably the best public comparable. And, by midsummer, NASDAQ was starting to rally, whereas on our side in the private space, it continued to stay fairly flat through the summer. But what we've seen recently is that while the public markets has again began to sell off, with all the macro data looking rather more negative and all the rate hikes that have spooked the markets, the private markets have actually started to pick up. Interestingly, we're seeing more activity and, let's say, more positive among others.
Interesting. And where is this data coming from? Is this employees of startups that are doing those deals? Those are the founders of the startups? So who's exactly is selling, and how do you get this information from?
So this is not any one particular sort of group. This is generally seen across the market, and we get this information from the consortium of brokers that we work with. So we have a number of brokers that have signed up to APEVUE on a give-get basis, so they get data in return for submitting data. All the data they submit is fully anonymized, so we don't actually know who the counterparties are that are doing the trades. But from the brokers, just from anecdotal evidence, we do hear from the brokers that there is more activity among some of the funds that are looking to maybe, take the opportunity of the sell-off that happened and perhaps capture some great companies that are at what might be considered a discounted price.
Okay. Now, you mentioned also before cybersecurity. Are there any Israeli companies that we should be keeping an eye on?
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of cybersecurity, SNIC was one that caught my attention.
Yes,
it
SNIC.
Has actually, SNIC. It has performed quite well recently, with its price going up almost to match where it was at earlier in the year, so rebounding from the lows of the summer. In the data space and data visualization, we've seen also a good progress. That's probably the sector that is, as a whole, performed better versus the overall APEVUE 50 that we track as the kind of index of all largest or at least most liquid private companies that we're seeing. And from Israel, Sisense has been doing very well recently. Again, rebounding from the drops in prices that we've seen over the summer, and not far off the higher levels that it reached at the start of the year.
All right, Roman, thank you for the market update. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.
Unicorn TV is brought to you by Symetria. Symetria offers ongoing liquidity management to attract and retain the best talents. Give your team the benefit they desire and deserve and win the competition over talents with Symetria.